But Stephanie, let's move on here now. Nate has been waiting very patiently, listening to our friends at Station of the Cross in Rochester, New York. And Nate, welcome to Catholic Answers Live.
Hi.
Hi there.
So,
what's your question, Nate?
Well, I am a male rape victim, and that's a big part of the reason why I'm pro-choice. If I was of the other gender and put in the situation, I would have aborted the result of that. I'm hearing a lot throughout this discussion about the rights of the unborn child, but mainly in rape situations, potentially in some medical situations, it seems like that's kind of ignorant or overlooks the rights of the mother.
Well, Nate, first of all, thank you for being willing to share what you just have shared with us. I can't even begin to fathom the suffering that you've gone through, and I think tragically what you've experienced is not foreign to many people. I think sexual assault is far more common than many people realize, and even as you just share that, two men are coming to mind that I have met in recent years who have also shared with me that they are male rape victims. So I'm deeply sorry for that suffering that you've gone through, and I think what you, in asking that question, can really identify with for the female rape victims is such an experience of a brutal violation that to your core was so against humanity, causes you to want to help that rape victim, that female rape victim. And it's understandable that you wouldn't want that suffering to continue for her. And if she gets pregnant, she's going to be continually reminded of that rape. Let me ask you, though, to consider, Nate, if a rape victim gets pregnant and has an abortion, will she no longer have memories of the rape?
She'll have the memories, but she won't have a reminder that she'll have to care for.
So you're right. She'll still have the memories. You're right. She won't have the reminder to care for. Now, is it possible, though, that she wouldn't have to care for the child if she placed the child for adoption?
It's possible, but then she has the memories of the 9 months that she had to put up with the pregnancy that she didn't want. I understand that giving birth can be a joyous and lovely thing, but that's typically when you want it. When it's a result of a crime and violation against, as you said, your base humanity, I can't imagine that being a pleasant 9 months.
You're right. And you know what, Nate? If the question is, will it be easy or difficult for a rape victim to carry through with a pregnancy from rape? If the question is easy versus difficult, you win. It will be difficult. And if that's how we determine the rightness or wrongness of choices, easy versus hard, then you win. Now, my question is, though, do we make decisions in life based on what's easy versus hard, or what's based on right versus wrong?
Well, we're not talking about decisions. We're talking about legislating what decisions other people have available to them.
And it comes down to what the decision is. So, for example, let's take the rapist himself. I mean, I think that rapist should be thrown in jail, and I think he should be forced to do hard labor. I mean, there should be some serious days of suffering ahead for the person who has inflicted such a brutal crime on such an innocent person. Do you think it's fair, though, to give the death penalty to the innocent child?
No, but I don't think it's fair for... The burden isn't a temporary one. Having a child is a fiscal burden as well that you're then asking for this woman to assume. Like, I don't imagine that there's anyone that provides relief for rape victims' children or something like that. It just...
And if there's not, okay, go ahead.
There's a lot that goes into the decision that, yes, there's moral aspects to it, but there's a case that I'm thinking of a little while ago. Somebody abducted a bunch of women and held them for like 12 years or something and had them have kids and whatnot. If they wanted
Ariel
to,
Castro, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
If one of those women was pregnant when they were finally found and they wanted to have that kid aborted because they didn't want to go through that all over again, like that's a phenomenally complex situation, even morally, I would think. And to create a law that just says you don't have this option seems uncompassionate.
Well, and I think, you raise a good point about that horrible story that came out of Ohio. And one of those rape victims who was just brutalized for years did get pregnant. One had several miscarriages, but one of the other girls was able to carry on with the pregnancy. And then she came out, and her little girl, I believe, is about 5 or 8 years old now. Would it be okay to kill that 8-year-old because she's a reminder of that monster's crime?
You have to deal with the situation you're given. That 8-year-old was born under captivity. That woman should be able to have that 8-year-old adopted, but no, that 8-year-old has a right to life because she's no longer physically dependent upon the mother. You find out you're raped, one of the first things you do is get a pregnancy test.
Yeah.
I'm hearing
Stephanie,
the music there. I think we have to take a break, Nate. I'm
but
really
Nate, if you would like to stay over.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We were talking with Nate in Rochester, and Nate, thank you so much for your patience, and we appreciate the fact that you were willing to stay on. And I'll just kind of hand it over to you and Stephanie, and the two of you can continue with this great conversation.
Great, Nate. Just as I was thinking about kind of what we already discussed, it sounds like we both agree that the act of abortion will not undo the injustice of rape, nor will it take the memories of the trauma away. And it also sounds like we agree that it's not fair that the child get the death penalty. So the question then is, will it be difficult to carry through with the pregnancy? Absolutely. There aren't words to describe how difficult. Do we need to support the woman and the child conceived in rape? Wholeheartedly, yes. My question is, though, again, may we kill an innocent child because of the father's crime? What do you think?
I think that to directly answer your question, no. However, I think that your definition of child is variable. I think that I don't consider something that physically requires another being to exist a child. I consider that a fetus, embryo. It's a different classification of being to me.
Okay, and so maybe then that is the crux of the issue, because it sounds like even with the example that we both can agree on, even coming out of Ohio with that Ariel who kept these 3 women captive and tortured them, we both can agree that the 8-year-old, if that's the age of the child, but this 8-year-old conceived through rape may not be killed because she's a human. And so it sounds to me then that you're calling into question what the preborn are because they're in their mom's bodies. So I guess what I'm wondering is, when did that 8-year-old's life begin?
I realize that this is kind of a flexible point to say because it depends very much on scientific advancement, but the age of viability.
Okay, so let's take the age of viability. Now, there's some debate. People are saying between 20 to 24 weeks, babies can survive out of the womb. But if let's just pick 24 weeks. Okay, let's just say 24 weeks. That implies that we've been counting time for how many weeks? If we say 24 weeks, how long have we been clocking time? How many weeks?
What, 6 months?
Yeah, 6 months, or I kind of gave it away, but also 24 weeks, right? So if we talk about 24 weeks, we're implying something happened 24 weeks ago that was pretty significant enough for us to consider we should press start on the clock and watch time go on. So wouldn't it make sense if someone's 24 weeks old that their life began 24 weeks ago at fertilization?
No, there's still opportunity for miscarriage.
Oh, and is there not opportunity for death after birth as well?
Yeah, but again, I'm not dependent on anything else. I'm not physically hooked up to anything else. If you want to talk about euthanasia as well or care about that, I'll have the same arguments, and I'm on the euthanasia side of it.
Right. I thought our question was not whether someone is dependent, but whether someone is human. Is our right to life grounded in our dependency or grounded in our humanity?
I suppose I'm basing my definition of humanity on dependence.
Okay, so then how would you respond to someone who said, because an infant cannot live on her own, she's fully dependent on someone to care for her, we may kill the infant? What would you say in response to someone who says that?
I'm not defining dependence that strictly.
And they would say, I am. Tell me why I'm wrong.
Well, that's an argument that we can have, but I don't know the person who wants to kill babies.
Or do you? See, the only difference between the line you've drawn and the imaginary person I just created was one of age. So why should our right to life be based on how old we are, Nate?
Well, what side of the birth control debate are you on? Because if you want to have this sort of discussion, we can go right back to the ejaculation.
Well, I think there's a difference there. I mean, certainly the Catholic Church teaches that there are the usage of contraception is immoral, but not because it kills, in the case of condoms, for example, but because it separates the unitive from the procreative, the very nature of the sexual act. That's a different argument, though, from what I'm proposing right now, which is that once life has begun, is it wrong to end that life? So this isn't a question about what is the nature of the sexual act. It's a question of when the sexual act brings about life, do we believe all humans are equal? So do you believe all humans are equal?
Depending on how you define human.
Well, if someone has two human parents, will it follow that they themselves are human?
At a point.
Okay, so two humans, would you agree, can only produce another human?
Yes, I'll agree to that.
Okay, so then we have three options for when that human can begin its life. Before fertilization, at fertilization, or after fertilization. Would you agree that we have one of those three options at our disposal?
Yep. Correct.
Okay, so let's take before. Let's take the sperm. Will the sperm in the man's body ever become an adult, ever become a baby, and then an adult?
No. Independently, no.
Right, correct. And the eggs in my body, if there's no sperm in my body, will my eggs ever grow into a baby and then an adult?
Independently, no.
Okay, correct. So therefore, option one is out of the question. You and I can both agree that life cannot begin before fertilization. So let's consider for a moment.
Conception and after.
Sorry, what was that?
I said, so we're left with conception and after.
Correct, exactly. So we've got two options. So let's consider the at conception. The genetic information which makes Nate Nate and Stephanie Stephanie, is that determined at fertilization?
Yeah.
Okay. And the one-celled embryo, will it grow into then 2 cells, 4 cells, 8, 16, and so forth?
Barring complication, yes.
Okay, agreed. There could always be complications. So then will the one-celled embryo in the right environment grow into a baby and then an adult?
Yes.
After fertilization, then, don't we just have an older version of the same individual whose life began at conception?
That's like making an argument that a colony of bacteria should be treated as sentient because it could eventually evolve to that point.
Okay, that's a good point. And I think what comes to mind is, why can't a cell of bacteria, let's say, think, versus why can't a one-celled human embryo think? Why can't a bacteria think?
Lack of requisite organs.
Okay, and it's not within its nature to have those requisite organs. But would you say it is within human nature to be thinking creatures?
Yes, but I'd also say it's within all things' nature to improve themselves.
And we could have that discussion, but in terms of the entity before us or an individual before us in that moment for that generation, it's not within the nature of a bacteria to think. It is within the nature of a human to think. The bacteria cannot think because of what it is. The one-celled human embryo cannot think because of how old it is. See, by virtue of having human parents, which you agreed the embryo has, it therefore follows that that offspring of the humans has the same nature and simply can't think because of how old it is. So if you say we may kill the one-celled human embryo, it would follow that you'd be guilty of age discrimination.
Okay.
So,
and Nate and Stephanie, I think we do need to leave it there and go to break. But, Nate, we really appreciate your call. This has been a fascinating conversation. And we hope that you'll keep listening and perhaps call again. Stephanie will be on, I think, later on this month, in fact. And, Nate, please know that we will keep you in our prayers as well.